Friends, thank you for being here today. To begin, let's look at the paradox of the lowlands. What if I told you that a tiny, rain soaked country smaller than the state of Maryland is arguably the most powerful economic engine in Europe? And how does a nation that should geographically be underwater manage to feed the world and control the global microchip industry? The existence of the Netherlands as a global economic superpower is, on the surface, a geographical and demographic paradox. Located in the northwest corner of Europe, it is a nation that appears almost insignificant on a world map. With a total land area of approximately 41,500 square kilometers, the country is roughly 235 times smaller than the United States, making it comparable in size to the state of Maryland. Yet, within this diminutive territory lives a population of roughly 17.5 to 18 million people. This gives the Netherlands one of the highest population densities in the world. If one excludes small city states, it stands as the most densely populated nation in Europe, trailing only the tiny island nation of Malta. Despite ranking 69th in the world in terms of population and 131st in terms of landmass, the Netherlands consistently punches far above its weight class. It boasts the 17th or 18th largest economy on the planet. To put this economic might into perspective, the gross domestic product of this small, swampy delta is larger than the combined economies of Singapore, Qatar, and Hungary. With a GDP per capita exceeding $50,000 and often cited as over $63,000 in adjusted terms, the Dutch enjoy a standard of living that rivals the wealthiest nations on earth. The fundamental question that arises from these statistics is one of causality. How did a country that is largely a flood prone river delta with a quarter of its land mass sitting below sea level manage to become such a dominant force in global trade, agriculture, and technology? The answer lies in a unique convergence of geography, hydraulic engineering, historical financial innovation, and a culture of pragmatic efficiency. But to really understand where this wealth comes from, we have to talk about the water. To understand the wealth of the Netherlands, one must first understand its relationship with water. The very name Netherlands translates to lowlands, a moniker that is literally accurate. Approximately 26% of the country lies below sea level, and fully half of the nation sits less than 1 meter above it. Geographically, the country serves as the gutter of Europe, the point where three of the continent's mightiest rivers, the Rhine, the Meuse, and the Scheldt, empty into the North Sea. For centuries, this geography posed an existential threat. The primary national security concern for the Dutch was not an invading army from across the border, but the relentless encroachment of the ocean and the swelling of rivers. However, this constant threat forged a society of master engineers. There is a popular saying that God created the earth, but the Dutch created the Netherlands. This is not merely a boast, it is a statement of geological fact. Roughly 20% of the country's current land area has been reclaimed from water through a process of dredging, draining, and damming. This battle against the elements forced the Dutch to innovate out of necessity. They did not have the luxury of ample, safe land. They had to manufacture it. The history of this reclamation is marked by colossal engineering projects. One of the most significant was the taming of the Zuiderzee, a large, shallow bay of the North Sea that frequently flooded the Dutch heartland. In the early 20th century, Specifically, between 1927 and 1932, the Dutch constructed the Afsluitdijk, or closure dike. This massive barrier, stretching 32 kilometers, physically separated the saltwater bay from the ocean, transforming it into a freshwater lake known as the Jaisalmer. This was not done solely for flood protection, it was an act of territorial expansion. By draining sections of this new lake, the Dutch created vast tracts of new land called polders. This engineering feat was so successful that it led to the creation of an entirely new province, Flevoland, which effectively did not exist a century ago. Today, Flevoland is home to over 400,000 people and thriving cities like Almere, which stands as a testament to the Dutch ability to conjure value from nothing. The second defining moment in Dutch water management occurred in 1953. A catastrophic North Sea storm surge overwhelmed the existing defenses, flooding nearly 1,400 square kilometers of land and killing more than 1,800 people. The national trauma resulting from this disaster led to the Delta Works, a project often cited as one of the seven wonders of the modern world. The government pledged to spend 20% of the national GDP over several decades to ensure such a tragedy never occurred again. The Delta Works consists of a complex series of 13 dams, storm surge barriers, and sluices that effectively shortened the Dutch coastline by 700 kilometers. Marvels like the Maeslantkering, a storm surge barrier with arms the size of the Eiffel Tower, and the Oosterscheldekering protect the economic engines of Rotterdam and Zeeland. This mastery of water has not only secured the nation's physical survival, but also became a lucrative export. As climate change threatens coastal cities worldwide, from Jakarta to New Orleans, Dutch engineering firms are hired to export their expertise, turning a geographical disadvantage into a source of national wealth. While geography provided the physical foundation, the economic architecture was built centuries ago. This economic architecture of Dutch wealth was built during the 17th century, an era known as the Dutch Golden Age. During this period, the Netherlands essentially invented the modern global economic system. They were the first to embrace the structures of corporate finance and trade that define capitalism today. Central to this development was the Dutch East India Company, known by its Dutch acronym, the VOC. Established in 1602, the VOC was arguably the world's first true multinational corporation. It was a unique entity, granted a government charter that allowed it to possess powers usually reserved for sovereign states. The VOC could mint its own coinage, negotiate treaties, establish colonies, and wage war. At the height of its power, it commanded a private army and a massive fleet of merchant ships that dominated trade between Europe and Asia. The wealth generated by the VOC was staggering. At its peak, the company was valued at 78 million Dutch guilders. Economic historians and analysts have attempted to adjust this figure for inflation and relative economic power, with some estimates suggesting that in today's money, the VOC would be worth a whopping $7.9 trillion. To put that into perspective, that valuation is roughly 2.5 times greater than the market capitalization of modern giants like Microsoft or Apple. While comparing 17th century wealth to 21st century economics is often debated, the sheer scale of the VOC's dominance is undeniable. To fund these massive and risky expeditions to the East Indies, the Dutch innovated financially. In 1611, the world's first formal stock exchange was established in Amsterdam. This allowed the general public, not just the aristocracy, to invest in trade voyages and share in the corporate profits. This democratization of investment capital provided the Dutch economy with a liquidity that other European powers lacked. It attracted capital and skilled labor from across the continent. Following religious persecution elsewhere, particularly in France, waves of wealthy and skilled Protestant refugees flocked to the Netherlands. They brought with them trade networks, capital, and industrial knowledge, further supercharging the Dutch economy. However, this era also taught the Dutch early lessons in market psychology. The Golden Age saw the rise of tulip mania in 1637, often cited as the first recorded speculative economic bubble. For a brief period, the price of fashionable tulip bulbs skyrocketed to absurd levels, with a single bulb reportedly selling for the price of a mansion. While recent historical analysis suggests the scope of the mania may have been exaggerated, it remains a potent symbol of the Dutch engagement with free markets embracing both the immense wealth creation and the inherent risks of speculation. Moving into the modern era, the Netherlands has leveraged this location to become the undisputed logistical heart of Europe. The same rivers that once threatened to flood the country, the Rhine and the Meuse, are now the highways of European commerce. The Netherlands sits perfectly positioned between the major economies of Germany, France, and the United Kingdom. The Rhine River, in particular, serves as a vital artery connecting the Atlantic Ocean to the industrial heartland of Germany, specifically the Ruhr Valley. The epicenter of this logistical dominance is the port of Rotterdam. For decades, it was the busiest port in the world, and today it remains the largest port in Europe and the most significant port outside of East Asia. The scale of Rotterdam is difficult to comprehend. It is vast enough to accommodate the largest container ships on the planet, operating fully automated terminals that run 24 hours a day. The port is not just a docking bay, it is an economic engine that drives a phenomenon known as the Rotterdam effect. The Rotterdam effect refers to the statistical anomaly where the Netherlands appears to export a massive volume of goods relative to its manufacturing base. In reality, a significant portion of these exports are actually re exports. Goods from China, the Americas, or other parts of Asia enter the European Union through Rotterdam. They are processed, sorted, and perhaps lightly assembled before being immediately shipped out to other countries like Germany, Belgium, or France. While the Netherlands did not produce these goods, the value added through logistics, handling, and taxation is attributed to the Dutch economy. This makes the country a trading titan. Currently, it ranks as the fifth largest exporter of goods in the world, surpassing nations with vastly larger populations and land masses such as the United Kingdom, Italy, and India. Supporting this maritime dominance is a dense network of inland infrastructure. The Netherlands possesses the densest network of inland waterways in Europe. Roughly 40% of all international freight movement within the country travels by water, and Dutch barges account for nearly 80% of the inland shipping fleet of the entire European continent. This water network is complemented by sophisticated rail and road links, such as the Betuwe route, a dedicated freight railway linking Rotterdam directly to Germany. Furthermore, Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam serves as a major cargo and passenger hub, ranking as the third busiest airport in Europe. Despite the country's small domestic market, Schiphol functions as a global transit point, further cementing the Netherlands' status as the gateway to Europe. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of the Dutch economy, however, is its agricultural sector. In a densely populated country with expensive land and a cool, damp climate, one would expect agriculture to be a minor industry. Yet, the Netherlands is the second largest exporter of agricultural products in the world by value, trailing only the United States. This statistic borders on the unbelievable when one considers that the United States possesses roughly 234 times more land than the Netherlands. The Dutch achieved this miracle by substituting land with technology and innovation. Faced with the hunger winter of 1944 and 1945, where thousands perished from famine, the post war Dutch government committed to a policy of never again. They decided to modernize agriculture with a focus on maximum yield and efficiency. Today, the countryside, particularly in the Westland region, is covered with vast expanses of glass greenhouses. These greenhouses allow farmers to control every variable of the growing process: temperature, humidity, light, and soil nutrition, enabling crops to be grown year round, regardless of the weather outside. The efficiency gains are astronomical. For example, the global average water footprint to produce 1 pound of tomatoes is roughly 28 gallons. In Dutch greenhouses, producing that same pound of tomatoes requires less than half a gallon of water. This hyper efficiency extends to the use of pesticides and fertilizers, which have been drastically reduced in favor of biological pest control and precise nutrient injection. The Netherlands does not just export food, it exports the intellectual property of food. A significant portion of their export value comes from high quality seeds and plant materials. Wageningen University and Research, located in the central Netherlands, is widely regarded as the best agricultural university in the world. It acts as the Silicon Valley of food, driving innovations that are sold globally. Vegetable seeds developed in the Netherlands are high tech products bred for disease resistance and massive yields. Some of these tomato seeds are literally worth more than their weight in gold, with a kilogram of high end seeds fetching prices over $100,000. By focusing on high value crops like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and flowers, specifically tulips, where they control 80% of the global market, the Dutch have turned a small footprint into a massive global footprint. While agriculture and logistics are traditional pillars, the 21st century Dutch economy is also anchored by a near monopoly in the world's most critical technology sector. In the quiet town of Veldhoven sits the headquarters of ASML, or Advanced Semiconductor Materials Lithography. While not a household name like Google or Apple, ASML is arguably the most important technology company in the world and stands as Europe's most valuable tech firm. ASML creates the machines that make microchips. Specifically, they hold a de facto global monopoly on extreme ultraviolet, or EUV, lithography machines. These machines are engineering marvels, costing over $300 million each, roughly the price of a large commercial airliner. They are the only machines in existence capable of printing the microscopic circuitry found in the most advanced chips used by Apple, Samsung, Nvidia, and TSMC. The process involves vaporizing droplets of molten tin with high powered lasers to generate light with an incredibly short wavelength, which is then reflected off the smoothest mirrors ever manufactured to print designs on silicon wafers. Without ASML, the global production of advanced smartphones, artificial intelligence processors, and military guidance systems would grind to a halt. This gives the Netherlands immense geopolitical leverage. As the United States and China engage in a trade war over semiconductor technology, the Dutch government and ASML find themselves as the kingmakers controlling the choke point of the future economy. This high tech dominance is supported by a business friendly environment that has attracted headquarters from around the world. The Netherlands offers a stable legal system, a highly educated workforce that is nearly universally fluent in English, and a tax environment that, while complex, has historically been advantageous for multinational corporations. Now, the narrative of Dutch wealth would be incomplete without mentioning natural resources. In 1959, the Dutch discovered the vast Groningen gas field in the northern part of the country. It was the largest natural gas field in Europe and one of the 10 largest in the world. The revenue from this gas, hundreds of billions of euros over the decades, helped fund the extensive Dutch welfare state and the massive infrastructure projects like the Delta Works. However, this windfall also served as a cautionary tale for economists, birthing the term Dutch disease. In the 1970s, economists noticed that the massive influx of foreign currency from gas sales caused the Dutch guilder to appreciate significantly in value. While this made the country rich on paper, it made Dutch exports from other sectors, like manufacturing, much more expensive and less competitive on the global market. The manufacturing sector hollowed out as the energy sector boomed. The Netherlands eventually learned to manage this by diversifying their economy and investing the proceeds. But they recently faced another challenge with the gas fields. Extraction caused earthquakes in the Groningen region, damaging homes and leading to public outcry. In a move that prioritizes public safety over pure profit, the government has largely phased out production from the field. This demonstrates a mature economy that is willing to leave billions of dollars in the ground to preserve social stability and environmental integrity. Finally, this wealth is reflected in the social organization and infrastructure of daily life. The wealth of the Netherlands is famously symbolized by the bicycle. The Dutch cycling infrastructure is unrivaled, with over 32,000 kilometers of segregated bike paths. In a country of nearly 18 million people, there are approximately 23 million bicycles, more than 1.3 bikes per capita. This is not merely a quaint cultural quirk, it is a ruthless economic efficiency. By integrating cycling with an extensive public transit network of trains and trams, the Netherlands moves its workforce with incredible speed and low cost. Commuters cycle to the station, take a train, and cycle to work, avoiding the traffic congestion that plagues other wealthy nations. This efficiency extends to the workplace itself. The Netherlands has the highest rate of part time work in the OECD. A significant portion of the workforce, both men and women, work fewer than 36 hours a week. Yet, due to high capital investment and efficient organization, Dutch productivity per hour worked is among the highest in the world. The society values a balance where work supports life rather than life revolving around work. While the country has low income inequality due to redistributive taxes and a strong social safety net, it does exhibit high wealth inequality, with a substantial portion of capital held by the upper echelon. However, the high levels of social trust, low corruption, and excellent public services, from healthcare to education, maintain a stable and prosperous society. However, the Dutch are not content with merely resting on their historical and industrial laurels. They are actively re engineering their economy for a sustainable future. The Dutch model has always been about adaptation, first to the water and now to the existential threats of climate change and resource scarcity. Recognizing that a small, resource poor nation cannot survive indefinitely on a linear take to make dispose economic model, the Netherlands has set one of the most ambitious targets in the world to have a fully circular economy by the year 2050. This is not merely an environmental aspiration, but a calculated economic strategy. The government has mandated a 50% reduction in the use of primary raw materials by the year 2030. By designing waste out of the system and keeping materials in use, the Dutch are positioning themselves to be the leaders in the next great global economic shift. This forward thinking approach is perhaps best exemplified by the city of Amsterdam, which became the first municipality in the world to officially adopt the donut economics model developed by British economist Kate Raworth. This framework challenges the traditional obsession with endless GDP growth. Instead, it visualizes an economic donut where the inner ring represents the social foundation, the minimum standard of living required for every citizen, and the outer ring represents the ecological ceiling beyond which the planet is damaged. The goal is to thrive in the safe and just space between these two rings. Practically, this has led to policies that mandate the use of recycled materials in construction, the creation of passports for building materials so they can be reused upon demolition, and a crackdown on fast fashion and single use plastics. By proving that a wealthy Western capital can prosper within planetary boundaries, Amsterdam is exporting a new kind of economic philosophy. Furthermore, the energy transition is reshaping the very landscape, or rather the seascape, of the Dutch economy. Having grown rich on the fossil fuels of the Groningen gas field, the country is aggressively pivoting to renewable energy. The North Sea, once the source of dangerous floods, is being transformed into the powerhouse of Europe through massive offshore wind farms. The government plans to scale up offshore wind capacity to 21 gigawatts by roughly 2030, which would account for approximately 75% of the country's current electricity consumption. This transition is driven by the famous polder model, a unique Dutch brand of consensus based decision making. Historically developed to get farmers, aristocrats, and villagers to agree on dike maintenance to prevent drowning, this model now brings together unions, employers, and environmental groups to agree on binding climate accords. This ability to forge social contracts for long term survival is perhaps the most valuable asset the Netherlands possesses. In a polarized world, the Dutch ability to agree on a 20 or 30-year roadmap for energy and resources provides a stable investment climate that few other nations can match. Just as they sold their water management expertise to the world in the 20th century, they are now positioning themselves to sell their circular economy and green energy expertise in the 21st. They are betting that the future belongs not to the biggest or the strongest, but to the most adaptable. So, what is the real secret behind this economic miracle? The immense wealth of the Netherlands is not an accident of history, nor is it solely the result of discovering natural gas. It is a deliberate construction. It is the result of a small nation realizing that its geography was both a death sentence and a gold mine. By conquering the water, they built the land they needed and the safety required to invest in the future. By leaning into their location, they became the warehouse and shipping clerk for the entire European continent. By embracing innovation, they turned a rainy small delta into the world's second largest farm and the sole supplier of the machinery that powers the digital age. The Netherlands is insanely rich because it transformed every disadvantage it faced into a marketable solution, proving that with enough ingenuity, even a swamp can become an economic empire.